I'm Tony Ruiz, contributing editor at Gold Derby, here with Gentry Akens, the production designer of the Waltons Homecoming. And Gentry, the Waltons, we were talking right beforehand, this is such a kind of an iconic property. And so I'm wondering, did you have any kind of like anxiety about tackling something that is already so well known to so many people?
None whatsoever. I have to tell you, I also was a fan of the show. I think it's during my high school and college years that the show was on the air. And I watched it religiously because it had such a well-represented, diverse and wholesome and happiness and a kind of happiness that looked promising and real and accessible. And that meant a lot to me. So when the opportunity came, I was doing back handsprings. I was like, wow, I get the opportunity to bring something so iconic back to life. And the very first thing I could think of was a combination of what it was and how to enrich and give it its own new identity for a new world of people and audiences. So I didn't have any anxiety. I really had like, oh my God, I get to do this. I was really excited.
Well, and so we have to first of all start off with the house because that again is such an iconic look, and you're correct. You want to be respectful of that and yet still do something new. So what was your approach to that?
Well, the very first thing I thought of was, wow, again, I'm gonna look at what was there. And there's a little bit of that designer thing in you that wants to kind of make your own stamp, something that's yours and unique, but to be beholden to what was, knowing that there's a large audience out there that knows all about it, all the details, and yet a new one that was coming. So I just thought, what can I do? What can I do to kind of bridge both of those opportunities together? The very first thing we had to do was scout, go locations, looking for houses that would be close to what was there, and knowing that it would be a little bit different. We still need. I needed to figure out visually how to still bring that hominess back. Make sure whatever we did, it captured that wonderful comfort, hominess that we know people really love and connect with so well.
So in doing that, were there particular aspects, particularly of the house, that you were like, yes, this has to be exactly right? Were there rooms that you were like, this area has to be like the kitchen maybe, or John Boy's room?
The John Boy's room came first, and the kitchen was the next thing that I thought. And so, of course, I dove into all this, watching the series, all the research I could find to make sure that I paid homage to that. And so my intent initially was to come as close to what it was with a little drop of something different that made it a little more current. And so that was the intent. And knowing that I too was a fan of the show, I was very familiar with a lot of the areas and where the family spent their time. And so the audience was going to be looking for the same thing I was looking for. So I was kind of the representative of fans like yourself and so many out there, keeping that in mind the entire time. So it was kind of interesting when we started going on scouting locations to look for that house. So I would walk into a place and, that would work, but John Boy said at that window, and the window really should be facing this direction. And wait a minute, the kitchen, no. The kitchen has to have that sink that's right behind the family, and that big table that the family sat at. And grandma always had that sort of sewing kit, that thing over there in the corner. So all of that was in my head the entire time we were scouting, looking for a location.
So at what point did you know that you had the right location?
Uh, when it got down to the nitty gritty, there was a house that on first seeing it, I thought that might be too grand. But then I started thinking about, but it's got those rooms that I can really work with. And depending on how we're going to shoot this, this could be really great. And so once we landed in this particular house, it was one of those production decisions that are made on the cost and the schedule and what was available. So we kind of got down to what was available, but mostly what we thought we could really make work. And we landed that house, and I was very excited to go in there to make the magic.
So was a lot of those, particularly those house scenes, filmed in the actual house? It wasn't recreated on like sound stages and things like that?
We went into an actual house that we had to modify. And let me tell you, there were some fascinating challenges. So to look at this house, one would think, wow, that's a big plantation. That's a plantation home. How are you going to make that look like a small intimate family farmhouse in the 1930s? And so that was where my challenge was, and I figured out what to do with it. So you walk into this place and you go into the area that would be John Boy's bedroom. Well, the ceilings were really high and there were tall windows and there was a fireplace. And, I said, well, John Boy didn't have a fireplace, but this is the house that we're based on schedule and time, et cetera, that we're going to have to work with. So I need to make this intimate. I really need to make this work in that way. So I was able to pick the right kind of furnishing from that period and to bring in just the right kind of elements that John Boy would have in his bedroom, and to make it feel a little more cozy. When I got to the family room, in this location, I had to make the family room very comfortable, et cetera, but the kitchen was in a room next door. It wasn't a great big space like they had in the Waltons house. So I needed to make sure that when you were sitting in the family room, the kitchen was very present. When you were watching the family at the table, the kitchen was right there. So I had to do a lot of unique kind of effects and things to just knowing that it was different, but how do I still make it feel what the Waltons made us feel, like family, cozy, comfortable, and familiar. So those are the kinds of things that I had to do to make it work.
Is it more difficult to change an established structure than it is to create something on say a soundstage?
The short answer is it's less expensive. When you have a certain amount of funds to work with, you have to maximize that amount so that you get the kind of results that you were needing. So in this case, it was this production wanted to go into this existing place. And so the important thing for me as the designer was to capture the emotion and the feeling and to make the new audiences and older audiences forget that it's not the same footprint, but I feel like I'm visiting and spending time with the Waltons again. So that became the most important thing when I knew I had to work within this structure.
And no Waltons property is complete without Godse's mercantile, without the store. I always, those small town stores are, even in the 21st century, have such a presence and such a feel to them. I have to imagine that was a particularly fun set to put together.
It was. Again, we found a location that came pretty close to capturing the spirit of an old grocery store, general store, but the big challenge was all the product had to be of that period, which we had to create and be approved, get clearances, so that we weren't putting any brands up there that were not legally right to put on camera. So we had a lot of fun and spent a lot of time creating this kind of jar of candy and jar of this and boxes of that. And what else would they have had? So our research, we had almost more fun researching what was in this, 1933, 1934, the kind of product and merchandise that were in Ike's. And that included groceries and produce. And this was Christmas time. So we also had to have a little corner of Ike's that was all dedicated to Christmas time and the kind of toys that they had, because you knew Elizabeth really wanted that doll. So we scoured the country looking for these kind of toy brands that were popular then. And it was a lot of work, but it was just so much fun at the same time. So we were able to pull off that Christmas time at Ike's.
When you're doing a show like this, and the main kind of thrust of the show is, John Boy going to try to find John to bring him home for Christmas. And so you're dealing with a lot of locations in the middle of that, smaller scenes and things like that. Do those scenes provide more challenges or fewer challenges than what we think of as the big kind of set pieces?
In this instance, it wasn't that challenging. I'm going to still continue to use the word, it was fun. And the reason I say that is because, we have a phenomenal producer team that has a strong vision for what they're looking for. And that information was clearly understood in terms of this being Christmas, homecoming, family, love, and that this was the spirit everywhere. All the scenes that were taking place had the spirit of that. So what that did for me was it helped me sort of tell a visual story with Christmas elements. And I hate to just sound so basic, but it was fun. It really wasn't a crazy challenge. It was just so much fun to do.
Was there one set that was the most fun to put together?
The kitchen had. I have to tell you, all of us would walk into the kitchen and say, "Whoa, wow, this is 1930s." Although, even though it was the story takes place in 1933, 34, we had to think along the lines of, but this was a home built a long time ago. So, built at the turn of the century, or, those early 1920s. So it was just so much fun building the cabinetry and all that to make that authentic. And then finding the refrigerators and the stoves. And what we found was that both of those were really tiny back in those days. So when you watch the movie, you'll see Olivia standing at the stove, and she's taller than the stove, but in all of our history and research and location scouting, that's how they were small. So we would just walk in there, and it just felt like being in an attraction almost, and taking a step back in time. So that and the great room and the store. We had a lot of fun going in and out of the store, just because it just felt like you were taking a step back in time in each one of those.
Well, you're currently in production on the next Waltons movie, the Waltons Thanksgiving. And without going into too much detail, are there elements of this upcoming film that you're particularly excited about? That's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. What is it about this property, about the Waltons in this time, that you think is just so attractive? Why people have responded to it the way that they have?
peace, love, happiness, getting along, diversity, friendship, the handshake, courtesy, the golden rule, and that it's not it doesn't have to be a fantasy. It really, all of us have goodness. People are good people. And so when we take a journey, a trip into the story of the Waltons and spend time with the family, you'll see everything. Disagreements, but understanding that at the end of the day, that we are family and we love each other and we agree to disagree. When they venture out into the town and to the townspeople and friends, it just feels like the way it ought to be. And so you get the opportunity for what is just common sense. And so when you spend your time there, you can just sort of cover yourself in it and just say, yeah, this is the way it should be. And the truth is, it can be. It's not unrealistic. So this gives you that opportunity to take that journey right in there with it and spend some time with the Waltons, the way that all of us would like to be spending our time.
Perfectly said. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the Emmys, and stay tuned for interviews with more contenders throughout the season. Gentry Akens, production designer of the Waltons, great pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.